All right, we are on air this Thursday, October 18th, and this is a check-in meeting for active development tasks on Backdrop CMS. Before we get into what we are currently working on today, I do want to make a quick announcement that we have a ton of new contrib projects this week. So Focal Point, something I use a lot in Drupal 7, which is great. It helps you choose a center point of a photo to crop around, which is fantastic. Login history, layout nodes, and web form submissions, multiple delete, all had releases this week. So, those are all new projects that have first releases this week, which is even more exciting. For Backdrop, we do have a security release coming out later today. So keep your eyes open for that. That will be version number 1.11.2. And then we have a bunch of issues slated for 1.11.3, including a couple that are RTBC. I would imagine these RTBC issues are not going to go into today's release because Nate doesn't usually like to do non-security fixes with security fixes. So those next issues for 1.11.3 include adding some predefined color schemes to basis. We have an issue 3209 has a pull request. It needs a little work. Some of the colors that are provided are not accessible. So I'd love if we could just run all of the predefined color palettes through a web accessibility checker to make sure that we are providing accessible defaults to people. And I think once we get those slightly adjusted, that'll probably be ready to go in. We have a bug reported only in Safari, an issue with the color preview. So that's issue 3295. I'm not sure it's been able to be properly reproduced yet, but if we can get that confirmed as being an issue, we can probably start making forward progress on the fix. The next issue is already reviewed and tested by the community, and this is regression related to the info status message, where we had an info class somewhere else in core that was not quite specific enough, so we're changing that class name to get around the issue. And we're also, I think, changing this CSS identifier so that if anyone had a class name info in their theme, it wouldn't automatically be updating that too. So I haven't looked at that pull request lately, but it is marked as RTBC. It's issue 3305. And those are all of the issues that we have marked as high priority for the next bug fix release. We have a couple more issues for 1.12.0. So these are new features, and this version is due out January 15th. Code freeze January 1st. The first one is related to our core updates meta issue, where we want to turn on the user interface for core updates. So right now there's user interface in core, but it's not visible. In the next release, we want to make it visible so people can start using it. So this is a manual update button. I'm not sure we have a GitHub issue for this, but I have it in our weekly agenda so that we can create one and not forget to turn on the UI. And once we get an issue created for that, we'll get an issue number in the agenda as well.
I think everything is being discussed on 441.
Okay.
Just confirm that.
Number 441. Okay, I'll link that up too. So I don't know if there's a pull request for that yet, but once we have one, we can start testing it. The next issue is around package signing. This is issue 1992, and this is something that we need to get done before we turn on automatic updates. It would also be a good idea to get done before we enable the update button. I'm not sure it will get done in time, but if so, that would be nice. What this will do is just ensure that the package that Backdrop receives when it does an update is the package it intended to receive. So if you go to update core, you want to make sure that you're updating it with a version of core that's the one that Backdrop intended you to have, not something that had been intercepted and delivered to you instead. So that one, I think, is a fantastic idea. I would love to see it get in for January 15th. I think right now we just need some more progress made on the issue. I think we had some feedback and a recommended alternative approach. So just want to look at that and see if maybe the alternate approach isn't better than the one we started with. Next issue, long-standing issue number 37, is adding tags for modules. So we're not just relying on the package groupings on the modules page. This will also be useful when you're searching for modules. You'll be able to search by tag too. The current pull request only provides tags in the info files lists them on the modules page, and adds them to the provided search box. It does not add any additional functionality to the module page. All of the additional changes have been moved into separate issues so we can argue about those separately and move forward on them one at a time as we reach consensus. Next issue is number 1005, and that's about adding options element in core. So this takes the allowed values text area and turns it into a more usable interface that has a key field and a value field and lets you reorder them. I think it's a fantastic improvement. I made a couple of usability recommendations last week. They've been implemented. I can't wait to try it again. But we'd love some more feedback on that if anyone else has any thoughts about making that interface a little better. But it's already a huge improvement over what's in core, so I can't wait for that for 112. And the next one, something that has been fairly important to the Backdrop community, has been on the agenda for the next core release a couple of times before, is fieldable file types. So if you wanted to be able to add a photo credit or a caption to an image or a publish date to a PDF, you can put fields on those files and they'll be separated by type. So this is issue number 2632. We have a pull request there. It needs a little bit more testing. It looks like it needs a little work, but we want some more feedback on it before we do another revision to that pull request. So anyone who's curious about playing with fieldable file types can give that one a try. And then we have a new one here. Gregory, this was mentioned by you. Do you want to give us an update on it?
Well, yeah, basically I mentioned that because I found a bug when I was working on it. It's just a recommendation to have sort of like more consistency across the admin pages and sort the available updates page the same way that we sort the status page with the important the security updates and the updates bubbling up to the top of the list, and then having the modules and themes and what have you that are up to date be at the bottom. We've been working on that. The problem that I found was that it wasn't a problem with core itself. It's with our processes, and it has to do with security releases of contrib modules that we are failing to mark them as security releases on b.org, and we need to figure out a way to streamline that. So basically, yeah.
Okay, so I just added that into our agenda under general discussion so that we can follow up on it in the next meeting as well to make sure that we actually get some solutions in place. But yeah, there's a couple of things we need to do. I think we need to update the documentation about contributor releases. We have a page for that on, I think it's on the API site under the contributing section. We need to make sure there's a specific thing there about like, if it's a security release, this is what you have to do. So number one is document what the steps that are required. And then the second one would be, how do we make that process easier? So right now, the fact that we have to document it is not great. And it does require someone who's at least an editor level on backdropcms.org to manually update that project. We talked about better solutions, like if we have single sign-on with GitHub, then anyone who is a maintainer for the contrib project could automatically get edit access to that node, and then they would be able to make that update themselves. So that wouldn't require an administrator, which would be great. And then even better, if there's something we could do at the Git level that would let us do it, would be also ideal, so that you wouldn't need to do something on Git and then also log into the site and mark it as a security update. And I don't know if there's a solution yet for that, but we should definitely talk about it and see if there's a way to do it. Apologies also for the kittens. If anyone lives in the San Francisco Bay Area and would like a kitten, we have an extra one and would love to get it adopted out. So adopt, don't shop. Sometimes they're distracting. Yes, definitely we need to document the current process for making contrib projects into security releases, and then we also need to make that process easier for our contrib developers.
So also the ticket number for the core updates in the UI was 414, not 441.
Okay.
Related to this one and the 3132, the one with sorting the modules, so certain ideas that pop up, and maybe they've popped up in the past as well, is now that we have core updates, these core updates will be appearing in update modules, update themes, and update layouts. So there was an idea at the past that we should consolidate those into a single place, and maybe the available updates page, if we find it, would be a good place to convert it to a global updates page, I guess, that includes everything, because it already includes modules, layouts, core, and themes. So perhaps besides just listing the updates, we should allow people to update from within that page.
That's a good idea. Okay, yeah. Do we have an issue for that already?
Yeah, I've mentioned it in the comments for 414. If we don't end up implementing it as part of that, then we will follow it up.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I remember that discussion. I think it was very early in Backtop. We're like, what are we going to, when we were thinking about putting the project browser in, we're like, oh, there's so many pages about where you can do updates. How are we going to do it? And we're like, well, let's just leave it alone and we'll figure it out later. I think it's later. So yeah, now's a good time to take a look at what we have and try and figure out how to make it make more sense. I love your idea of just making everything updatable from the available updates page, because that's where people are usually going to check on those things anyway. So yeah, that's great.
There was another issue that might be worth mentioning, the one to move certain files under core, like htaccess and the rest of them. So yeah, we need some feedback on that. There's a few ideas that have been thrown around, some security concerns, and then some workarounds, possible workarounds for those. So any feedback, especially from Nate and Jeff, would be welcome, or anyone who's more technical.
I think I saw some of that.
Just let me find the ticket.
It's 3025 maybe.
Yeah, that's the one, 3025.
Okay. So I also like the idea of moving more things to core, so that our instructions when we tell people to update Backtop are just copy the core directory. I think that's fantastic, especially after having to deal with some of the craziness of updating Drupal 8 sites, where it's like you copy the core directory and the vendor directory, and oh, there's all these other files. As much as we can decrease that kind of confusion for people, the better. But we do have some files that are like super useful to have in that root directory. And so I really like the idea of providing like starting point, like we have the settings example file, right? Having something like that where we could have an example htaccess file, an example gitignore file, and all of those are in core. But as we're concerned about an issue, I also would love to have on initial install all of the files that are needed to be copied, so that your instructions can be update core, but then if you've made any changes to those other files, like your site will still run, it'll still be secure out of the box, but it's not going to overwrite those files unless you manually make those changes again. So there are some things we need to do carefully when we do that, but I love the direction that is going in, so I agree we need more feedback on it from core committers. Yeah.
It pairs up with a ticket. I'm not sure if it got in with the previous release, the ticket to move the core profiles under core.
Yeah, it did.
So if we get most of the files there, so most of our instructions would be simply replace the core directory instead of replace the core directory, but also do this and that, and so on and so forth. It will simplify things a lot.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Let's see. I think that's it for high priority issues for 112. But if there's anything else that people are interested in, we do have a milestone for 112 that includes a lot more than what we've just talked about. So I would just encourage anyone to look at what's in that milestone to see if there's anything that you're really passionate about that hasn't made the list we talked about in the agenda. We just added a couple of new things to it today based on your feedback, Gregory, so we'll see if we can get those in for 112 as well. So next up, we have a section in the agenda where we do an update on Backtop for Good. We have a project that could use volunteers. There is an issue queue if anyone wants to grab an issue and work on it under Backtop for Good. There's a link in the agenda There's also GitHub group is capital B backdrop, the number 4, capital G good. So you can check out what's going on there. All right, so under general discussion, I added the contrib security updates here, but that's mostly for our next meeting, so we can follow up on what we have to do today to make sure that that gets done. And then there's another item here, which is licensing for contrib projects. Last week, and I think the week before, we talked about it. We have an open issue for the PMC that was currently under discussion. I'm going to bump that this week to needs a vote. So hopefully next week we'll have a definitive answer and we'll be able to start updating documentation to reflect that. So I'm going to leave this in the agenda just so we can get there again next week. And that's it for what's on the agenda. But as with all of our meetings, we always have an open Q&A at the end where anyone can bring up anything related to what's on the agenda or not. So if you want to say hello or adopt my kitten or whatever it is, now is the time that you can do that. Does anyone have anything to add today?
Yeah, it's not related to core, but maybe I missed the previous, I guess it goes with the design meeting regarding our website, our main website, b.org. So it was mentioned at some point or asked that on our roadmap page, there's a list of the things that we are planning for the next release and also the goals for 2.0, but someone also decided, so anything that is API breaking, we have pushed to 2.0 and we list it there. Anything that we definitely want to get done on the next release, the immediately next release is also listed, but sometimes we have big plans that are pushed in future 1.x, and this is not listed. So the idea there was to have an additional new features plan for 1.x version, and so that people can see what the sort of like the most immediate roadmap is.
Okay. Do you happen to know what we talked about for 1.x?
I think.
So I just added a new 1.x section to that page, but I would encourage, we can go back and watch last week's meeting, that's when we talked about it. I would encourage anyone who has edit access to go ahead and make a change to that page, and if you're not sure if it's correct, create a revision, and we can get someone else to review it. But yeah, I think in general, the more information we can put on this page, especially now that we know that we can make a bunch of improvements that are non-API breaking, if we have things that are specifically scheduled for core, and we know we want to do them in the future, getting them on the list would be good to make that transparent for everyone. So I know that we talked about like our automatic updates no longer have to wait for 2.x, so I just moved that to the goals for 1.x section. But I think there were other things too that we mentioned that we wanted to get in for 1.x that aren't on the list yet.
Yeah, like references module.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
So yeah, people will know that we are not planning that for the immediately next release, but it's on our radar for 1.x and not pushed like way further into the future.
Yeah. That's great. So then I think this is also a good place where if we have something that we schedule for a release and it doesn't get done and we have to bump it, if we can then move that into this, like we know we're going to do this in 1.x section, but just like maybe not the release we thought it was originally scheduled for, that would at least let people know we're working on these things, we're going to get to them even if they don't make this particular release. So good idea. We can also go back and look at all of the issues that are in the current milestone and see if there are any that have, if it had been moved or moved back or whatever. And if it's not going to make it this one, we can do something. So
it doesn't have to be everything, just the major ones.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Anything else we should talk about? Okay. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up this meeting because we've got a lot of updating to do today. And we will see you guys next week, if not before.
Yeah. See you guys.
Bye.